Hello, hello everyone. It is me, Arden Lee. I am back today with another video. And in today's video, I want to talk about one of the biggest factors that keeps people from moving forward and creating change in their lives. Before I get into that, of course, I would love to invite you to look in the description box where you're going to find a link to a free PDF about the modality of repatterning that we use in the Repatterning Project, which is an 8-week course that I have created that you can go ahead and check out. If you want more support around this kind of education, you can click on the link to the Repatterning Parlor, which is a free group that I curate on Facebook, and you can check that out and meet some like-minded individuals who are also on the path to optimizing their lives toward happiness and success. So I would love for you to take a look at those. If my video content inspires you, let's go even deeper, let's connect, and yeah, do this thing. So the thing I want to talk about today, oh man, I connected with someone recently who is someone that I only know so far online, just through social media. And but I've watched this person's work over the years. I've watched their writing, I watched the content that they post, and I've seen so much potential in them. They're also, I suspect, a number of years younger than me, and so I see a lot of my former self in them too. I've also seen a lot of nihilism and a lot of sort of stasis and defeatism, which can often be typical from that age. I'm not assigning those qualities to that person in particular, but I know that that happens a lot to people who at a certain age are kind of thrust into a world that is not designed for their happiness, and it's very easy to adopt nihilism and defeatism as ways of coping with that. But this person recently had a pretty big revelation where he started working with some of the modalities that that he had available to him to start creating some change in his life. And if he was anything like me, you know, when I started sort of doing the same things, you kind of do this as like a last ditch resort. You're like, oh my God, you know, like whatever, this is never gonna work, but fine, I surrender. Like, what else am I gonna do, you know, to move forward? And all of a sudden it starts working, and that can be very frightening to our worldview, right? Because once we realize that we have the ability to create change in our lives, we no longer have an excuse not to use it, right? I'm going to say that again because that is the crux of this video, and it is a really important sentence. Once we realize that we have the ability to create change in our lives, we no longer have any excuse not to use it, right? So we find ourselves complaining about something before. Oh, wait, now I have the ability to change my relationship to what I'm complaining about, right? You know, if I'm complaining about not having enough money, for example, you know, how many times, especially throughout our 20s, do we complain about being broke, right? Until we finally fix our money mindset and we start to realize, oh, wait a minute, there are things that I can do, that I can learn to start bringing in more financial abundance, to start bringing in more income. And if I do those things, then I'm going to be able, you know, maybe it won't be by tomorrow, maybe it won't even be next week or next month, but maybe 3 to 6 months from now, I'm actually going to be in a pretty different place, you know, or I'm going to have a substantial difference, and I'm going to be on the road to bringing in more and more, right? So once you realize that you can create that change, then you may no longer have any excuse to sit around and complain about the fact that you don't have any money. And what happens then, right? Well, what happens then is that so often we then drive a rift between ourselves and the people around us whom we've bonded with over our same complaints, right? How often do you guys have friendships where the basis of your friendships are like your mutual complaints, right? It's like almost like if you're working a job that you hate and you go to happy hour every day after work with your coworkers, and you go there and you bitch about your job, and then, you know, what happens to your social life? If you get a new job, you might not be friends with those same people anymore. That might be a good thing for you, but that's change, and that's uncomfortable, right? Same with once you realize your power of relationships, right? One of the things that has been so transformative to me over the years is this idea that we can't complain about what we permit in our relationships and friendships with other people, right? If we're permitting something, then we don't get to complain about it. And once I really leaned into the energetic feel of that, it really started to change things for me, right? I said, well, if this person is being cruel to me in some way or whatever, am I permitting it? Am I permitting them to do that? I might not be asking for it. I might not be blaming myself, but I'm still letting this person be in my life. I'm still treating them with the kindness that I want to be shown, assuming that maybe if I'm kind enough to them that they'll return it to me. But that's not how it works. So instead, instead what's happening is I am permitting them to repeat these behaviors over and over again, and I am maintaining the status quo in that friendship or in that relationship. And once I realize that I have the power to change that by setting my boundaries and walking away, I might not change that person, but I certainly change the quality of my relationships that I allow in my life. What it means when I set that boundary, when I have that standard, is it means that, now it's like, you must be this tall to ride, and if you can't abide by my standards, I'm sorry, I love you, but I'm going to love you from over here, because I don't want that energy in my life. I'm not okay with that. I'm not permitting being treated in that manner, right? And once we realize that we have the power of setting those boundaries, we can no longer complain about what we choose to put up with, because once we realize that we are making a choice to put up with a certain behavior by not drawing a boundary, by permitting it, we can no longer complain about it. And what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Now it looks like we have to start changing our lives. Now it looks like we have to start, we don't have to, but we're certainly invited to, right? If we want to complain more and say, oh my God, I can't believe this person is being so mean to me, right? Then what do we do when we have that realization that we have the power to create change in our lives? It means we have no excuse not to use it. It means we have no excuse not to set that boundary and say, you know what, I'm not okay with being treated like this anymore, and if I lose you, then I lose you. And we risk, of course, losing that person, right? We also risk losing all of the friends that we have around us who also like to complain about being treated badly. I was so worried when I started to get my relationship shit together a couple of years ago. I was so worried that I realized, I was like, you know what? I not only have to get rid of the narcissists in my life, like the toxic people who are treating me badly, but I may also have to get rid of the people who are like really kind and overgiving, who enable me feeling that these kind of relationships are okay. I had so many people in my life at that point who enabled what I was doing, who were in the same relationships, the same quality of relationships themselves, where we would go out for drinks and we would just, bitch about our emotionally unavailable partners and how terrible they were being and all the, emotional torment they were putting us through. And I was going to lose those kind of trauma bonds, I was going to lose that friendship potentially, very much in the same way that perhaps someone who is either an alcoholic or someone who's abusing substances or whatever, and says like, okay, I want to get sober, much in the way that they may lose their drinking buddies. You lose the people when you decide to improve. You may lose the people around you who keep contributing to the belief that what you're presently doing is okay, right? The people around you who are doing the same thing. Same thing with like any major lifestyle change, so making these changes is risky, and it's very hard for us to admit to ourselves that we do have the capacity to make a change. Once you realize, I'm going to say it again for the third time because it's important, once you realize that you have the ability to create change in your life, you then have no excuse not to use it, right? I mean, you don't have to use it, you can choose not to, but then that that's what you're doing. There's really no excuse beyond that. You realize that it's a choice, right? You realize that that's something that you're choosing. You're choosing to stay in those toxic friendships, toxic relationships. You're choosing to stay in that job. You're choosing to stay in a broke mindset when you could be learning about how to call in more financial abundance, when you could be learning, hey, how am I going to save some money this week that I can later invest in something. Hey, how can I start hustling more? How can I maybe develop a side hustle? Whether it's I don't know, I'm going to start finally selling some of my art on Etsy. I'm going to finally take this thing that I love doing anyway, and I'm going to finally, like, maybe it's like I don't know, my mom, like, is this really talented colored pencils artist, and she's retired, and she's a homeowner. Like, she doesn't need to be in, like, the millennial grind of things, of making money. But I keep telling her, I'm like, Mom, it's right there. Like, it's right there. You make all these drawings anyway. Why not put up, like, an Instagram? Like, just open an Instagram account where all you put up is your drawings, and just say, like, hey, anyone who is interested in a print, reach out to me. And I'm like, I don't care if you sell them for $10 and just take PayPal, like $10 plus shipping, and just, and handle PayPal with every buyer individually. I don't care if you don't even want to set up a storefront, but this is something that you are able to do for yourself. Now, my mom's fine. My mom doesn't need to sell her art to be happy, and if she chooses not to because she doesn't want to deal with it, that's fine. But then that's a choice, right? But if ever, if ever my mom were to say, like, oh, money's tighter, I don't think I could afford that, or whatever, like, you can believe I would be like, Mom, if you had set up that Instagram with prints of your drawings, you might have an extra, like, $500 this month, who knows, right? So whatever that is, whatever that looks like to you, that's what I want to emphasize, is that is a belief that keeps us so much out of claiming our own power and starting to make those choices and do things differently, is the belief, the understanding that once we know that something works, once we know that we have the power to create change in our lives, we then can't really make any excuses anymore, or be in that, oh God, I hate victim mentality, and, like, that phrase and how it's been twisted, because we are all at some point in our lives, like, we all go through being a legitimate victim, but staying in that mentality of entrapment, and not empowering ourselves to create change and to rise out of it, being more about being in the complaint of it, enjoying the complaining, enjoying the struggle. Once we realize that we do have the capacity to create change in our lives, then there's no reason for us to keep complaining, unless, at that point we have to admit that's actually really what we want. And some of my friends have done that too. Some of my friends have been like, Arden, I like complaining, it's fine. I'm like, do you just need to complain? Do you just need to complain for 5 minutes, and that's what you need from me? Okay, I'll listen for 5 minutes, and when you're ready to change, when you're ready to deal with what you're complaining about, when you want things to be different, let me know, then I'm happy to help you with that, right? But okay, if you just want to complain, go for it. But then that's what you have to admit to yourself at that point, that you really just want to complain about it. And if that's fine too, right? That's choice. So, but know that you have that power to make that choice, and understand that is the obstacle to reclaiming that power for yourself to be making those choices, is that that when you have the capability of creating change in your life, then there's really no excuse not to use it. So that's the hurdle, right? That's the hurdle forward. That's what we need to embrace about ourselves, and then we don't get to be lazy anymore. Then we don't get to be in that spot of, like, that spot of just loving complaining about how bad life is all the time, with all our friends who love complaining too, right? So big changes on the horizon when we do those things. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful, and let me know how it landed with you, and thank you, and I'll see you next time.